Here I am again, and I have got more answers to your seller questions. Do you have a property that you're wanting to sell and not quite sure where to start? Well, start here. I am delving into even more seller questions that I get asked all the time. I have been flooded with questions from people who are wanting to get their properties sold. So here I am back again with some more answers for you today. And number one, what happens during a home inspection? Once your property is under contract, there's going to be an inspection period. Check your contract because that could be 1 day or it could be 30 days. In our area, what's standard is 15. When a market gets super competitive, sometimes it gets smaller so that buyers have a better chance of getting their offer chosen. But during that period, buyers at their expense are going to be able to do due diligence on the property. They can have a home inspector, they can have a structural engineer, they can do radon testing, termite testing. Basically, as long as they leave the property in the condition they found it, they're allowed to have anybody come look at it that they want to. Typically, buyers are going to start with a home inspector and a WDO, which stands for wood destroying organism. Typically, that's when a pest control company comes out and they test for any kind of fungus, termite damage, wood rot, to give an overall view of what's happening inside and out on the property. Now, there's a caveat to this. If you are a seller and you have accepted a loan and a contract from a VA buyer, a veteran, the WDO gets paid by you. Usually that runs between $75 and $150, which every veteran deserves way more than that. Inspection's typically going to be about 2 to 3 hours and is going to be scheduled between the buyer's agent and ultimately you. They're going to say when they can have the appointment and when they can come in, and you've got to give them permission to say it's okay. You do not have to be present at the inspection, but it's up to you if you'd like to be. Once the inspection is complete, the buyer and their agent are going to get a report, usually the next day, and they're going to assess if there's anything that's super wrong with the house or any questions that they have for you. You will not see that report unless they're coming back to you to make an ask. And if anything is going to go back and forth in negotiations, it has to be done within that inspection period. Number two, will I be required to make a bunch of repairs after the inspection? That depends. It depends on the type of contract that you have between you and the buyer. It also depends on whether or not they're going to walk away from the deal and if you want to save it. So let's go first to the type of contract. If, for example, the buyer has an as-is contract, the language states that the buyer has every right to do their due diligence and to, at their own expense, take a look under the hood. They also have the right to ask you to repair anything or offer seller credits. However, you are under no legal obligation to do any of it. What you have to keep in mind, though, is what they're asking for. If they're asking for a bunch of cosmetic stuff that's really not a big deal, a lot of times you can tell them to go pound sand. But if perhaps they're asking for something that's a safety issue or something that pretty much any buyer is going to ask you to do, it may be worth negotiating and figuring out a way to keep the deal together, because if you start over with a new buyer, odds are you're going to end up back in the same spot. Now, if you've done a residential contract, those contracts often pre-negotiate the terms for repairs. A lot of times you'll have a certain budget amount that you'll go up to. Seller will pay up to $300 in repairs for general items, up to $500 in WDO issues. So if you've pre-negotiated that, that's kind of the limit that the buyer can ask for. Anything above and beyond, well, that may be up to them. But make sure you have your agent check whether or not they've done a right to inspect and cancel rider to go with that residential contract, because then it may allow them to walk away. Number three, what do I do with my old survey? If you had a survey done when you bought the property, or perhaps you inherited one from a previous seller, hang on to it. And when you go to sell your property, get it to your agent so that they can get it to the closing attorney. And whoever's doing the closing is going to be able to assess whether or not it's usable. What's really nice about having a survey is it saves the buyers money, which is a good thing to do, but also it's a time saver. I can't tell you how many times I've seen closings get delayed because surveyors are so backed up. They have to do the field work, draw up the survey, and if you already have one that's ready to go, then You save a lot of time and angst sometimes when it comes close to closing. What you have to make sure is that your footprint hasn't changed. So if you bought the house 5 years ago and you've added a fence and a shed, your survey's not gonna work because those things have changed and they aren't on the survey that you have. Number 4, who will handle the closing? A lot of the time, you're going to be able to pick who is going to handle the closing for you when your house sells. Occasionally, a buyer will offer to pay certain extra fees so that they can choose, but most of the time in our area, we see sellers getting to make that choice. And you have a lot of options. You can go with attorneys, you can go with title companies. It's a really great time to lean on your agent and ask who they recommend. Sometimes title companies are a little bit cheaper than attorneys. However, if things start to go south, title companies are not attorneys. So if you need legal advice, you're gonna have to retain one. Typically for me, I do like to go with closing attorneys because I like to have them just a phone call away. But we have some really great title companies in the area, so just ask your agent who they recommend. Number 5, do I get to meet the buyers? Maybe. A lot of times in a real estate transaction, the buyers and sellers may not necessarily meet. And sometimes that can be a really good thing, particularly if there's any kind of hostile negotiations going on. Sometimes agents will try to keep buyers and sellers very far apart. But a lot of times you may see them perhaps at the inspection or at the signing or closing. Now, in pre-COVID days, a lot of times we had the buyers and sellers all at the same table. That's changed a little bit now, but occasionally you do get to meet each other, and I've often seen sellers leave a really nice letter for the buyers as they're coming in. Number 6, should I leave anything behind for the buyers? When closing day comes and you're moving out, if there's any kind of furniture or equipment you're planning on leaving, you want to make sure you clear it with the buyer's agent first, because they may not want your couch. They may not want your dining room table. If they do, awesome, you can leave it. But if they don't, when the buyers come and do the walkthrough, you may be having to scramble to get a mover at the last minute to get the junk out that they don't want. If you're thinking of leaving them something nice, that's a great gesture to make. You are absolutely allowed to leave a gift basket or a note or bottle of wine or whatever you want to do. That's completely allowed and encouraged if you feel up to doing so. Number 7, when do I have to be out of the house? When you're selling your property, typically, as soon as it closes, the property transfers over to the new buyer and new owner. Now, if that's happening, you need to make sure everything is out, and so are you, prior to closing. Usually I recommend if you're closing on a Friday that you have everything wrapped up and out by Wednesday, just in case there's anything last minute you need to do on Thursday. If you, however, are doing a post-occupancy, which means that the house closes, but you're gonna stay and rent it back from the new buyer, then that's a little bit different, and you're gonna have a very fine end date of when you need to be out. If you wanna be out earlier, however, there's nothing stopping you. Number 8, when should I have the power and the utilities switched off? As closing day approaches, I'm typically going to recommend that you call your utility, gas, power companies about a week in advance. Now, you've got to make sure that you have all the power and everything on all the way through the walkthrough and closing. So, for example, if you're closing on a Wednesday, I usually recommend that you call the companies and have everything turned off the following day, on Thursday. In addition to that, I'm usually, as a listing agent, going to be in touch with the buyer's agent to make sure that they're calling on their end to have everything transferred. But that's ultimately their responsibility, and you don't want to be caught paying a utility bill that's not yours. So even if they haven't called, you can still have everything shut off after closing. Number 9, how long does it take to sign everything on closing day? As a seller, closing day is a little bit shorter than when you're a buyer. Now, as sellers, a lot of times you can go in and pre-sign. So if you've got a really tight schedule, or perhaps you're leaving the area, or maybe it's been a little bit hostile between you and the buyer, you can come in and sign early. Signing for sellers is 15, 30 minutes. I always tell people to plan for an hour just in case, but usually you're in and out of there pretty quickly. And if perhaps you've already relocated, we do have e-signing opportunities as well as mail-away closings, so you don't necessarily have to make a trip back. Talk to the closing agent and they can let you know the best process moving forward. Number 10, when will I receive my money after closing? When you go in to sign your paperwork, you're going to let the closing agent know how you want to receive your funds. They can wire it to you with the bank account of your choice, or they can cut you a check that they either mail to you or you come and pick up. If you choose to do the wiring option, that's usually the fastest way to get your funds, and it depends on when closing happens that day. If it happens first thing in the morning and everything's funded by 9 o'clock, odds are you could see your funds drop into your account by that afternoon or possibly the next day. However, if the closing is right at the end of the day at 4:30, you're not probably going to see your funds until the following day or the day after. In terms of the check, it just kind of depends on how long it takes to get it mailed or for you to pick it up. Bonus round. The house is closed, but I kind of still have questions. Am I going to bother you if I contact you? You can text me, you can call me, you can email me. If you're watching this right now, you can drop a comment below or send me a direct message. I use all forms of communication, though I'm not really great at Morse code or smoke signals, but if it has to do with my cell phone, you're gonna get in touch with me, and I encourage you to ask me any questions that you have. Even if you're no longer in the area, if you move to another state, I'm still here. For real estate questions, or if you need a referral, perhaps you're buying a house in a new state, I can get you in touch with a reputable agent who's gonna help you out. So please don't hesitate to contact me at any time for anything. That's why I'm here, and that's why I love what I do. So many questions, and I hope I've done a good job of answering them all for you. If you have other questions that maybe I haven't touched on, please be sure to check out my previous video on another batch of seller questions that I did. I'm Lindsey Johnson, your resource for all things real estate. See you next time.